As you've seen from the finished shot, basically the length of this haircut, which is slightly shorter at the back and slightly longer at the front with the soft pieces coming out, means that the perimeter of this haircut is actually the most important part of it. So that's the area that I'm going to start to work through. And because the length difference from the back of the cut round to the sides is quite relevant, the best thing to do when you're doing something like this is to take your section all the way around the perimeter area. So I'm going to take a curved section, divided the hair into two sections at the back already. Take a curved section, leaving out just enough hair to start your baseline, and work that right round towards the front. And very often when you're cutting a line, and you do need to have a difference in length between the front and the back, sometimes by leaving it out, it helps you guide yourself through to the length. If you sort of tend to section it away or get rid of it and deal with it separately, sometimes you can't see exactly where you're working towards. So perimeter section all the way around before you begin. Now, like most haircuts, the most important part of the cut is the outline shape or the baseline shape. And your layering really is an accessory to that. So it's important to make sure that you get your lengths and shape of this haircut firmly in place first. Just take that all the way through. Okay, now Linda's hair is really fine hair. The texture of her hair is very fine. And because of this, rather than using a scissor blade on her hair, I'm going to be doing a majority of this haircut with the razor. And here we have the razor's edge here. And basically, this is a razor that's very, very easy to use. And you'll see as I work through the program that you can hold that very like you hold a pair of scissors. The thing about it is you have 4 different types of blades that you can use. Each one is for a very slightly different effect on texturizing. My main objective with this particular cut is to cut the baseline and some of the layers, but to use this like a pair of scissors, in fact. So I'm creating straight lines, not torn out lines, and creating a soft edge at the same time. Now, there is one blade here that you can use, it's the cover, and it gives you a very open blade, so it's like a cutthroat type effect. The one I'm using here is this particular one that you can use for either texturizing or you can use for cutting straight lines. As you can see, you've got the razor inside and you close that down and close it in. Your razor is inside here, so you can't cut yourself, and you've got this sort of slightly beveled edge on the top here. That you can use just for texturizing to create small channels of hair, or you can use it to create a baseline, which is what I'm going to do. So, perimeter line all the way round, and the first thing I'm going to do is to start the baseline area, and I'm going to start in the center here. Now, because I've got the whole section all the way round out, I can see exactly what type of length that I want to go to. I'm going to keep this below the hairline, and I'm going to start by holding the hair very, very neatly, and you start to chip in and work across that line, like so. So you get more or less a straight line, but if you look very carefully, it is a slightly beveled edge on the line. Now, when you're cutting very fine hair tends to really mark with a scissor blade. You often get a really blunt effect. And often people with fine hair prefer their hair cut almost 6 weeks after it's been cut, purely because the edge has softened. So this gives you that effect straight away. And believe me, you can cut very, very severely geometric blunt lines into a haircut with this particular blade. And the razor's edge gives you the variety or choices to choose from to create the effects that you want to create. Now, very basic rounded line, nothing very severe on its shape. and rounding the line up slightly to keep a nice thickness to the hair, and also to keep it to a good length up and around to the ear. Sometimes if you drop that line down, you find that the line becomes too long towards the front. I want it to be around the jaw length, so just keeping a nice rounded shape. Now, if you find that you have small pieces of hair underneath the baseline, you just hold the section. You allow those pieces just to slip between your fingers, and then you take them off with the razor. Okay, now I've cut the main baseline area here. What I'm going to do is just go to the other side here and take the edge of the cut and blend that together. So at least the main perimeter shape has been formed before we start to bring the rest of the hair down. Now the idea is to keep the line all the way towards the jawbone and then drop some pieces down through the sides here. So I'm going to take the hair right up to the center of the ear on this level. So all that hair there. Drop the hair down very gently and then just continue that curved line. Just keep the line going towards the ear, and then when you get to there, this is where the line is going to start to drop out. So this front area is slightly longer and comes through and then drops in. Now, because I'm using the razor, you can blend this out towards the longer lengths. And if you watch carefully, what I do is to hold the section very neatly. You place the razor above the finger, and you then graduate down, and you slide your fingers down the section at the same time. So that the sliding of your fingers actually guides you to the length that you would like to cut. So it's not just the action with the razor, it's also the way that you use your fingers to create that shape. I'm going to do the same on this side. Just wet the hair down so that the razor glides through the hair with ease. I do actually use the razor on dry hair as well, and sometimes use it, as I may well on this cut. Once the hair's been dried and finished, you can use it just to sculpture out a little bit more texture on the hair or a little bit more length or weight, wherever you feel that you need to do that. Center of the ear again. Keep that shape going through. It's a definite line, but it's a nice soft line. And then you continue in the same way. So you take the section very neatly, hold the hair neatly, and you can see that the baseline is just here. You take that line, you hold the razor slightly to the side, not into the front. You come behind the line and then razor through. Now, whenever I'm doing a length that's slightly longer towards the front or drops out from the main baseline, what I tend to do is to keep it quite long. You can always remove some weight afterwards. You can never add it back on. So it's always a good idea to leave it a little bit longer than you anticipate to make sure that you get the right line. So I'm just going to wet the hair through and take down another section. The main guideline is in at this point. As the main guideline is now in place, everything else can be brought down to that line. And obviously the hair is thicker through this back section, so I'm going to continue in that area first and make sure that the baseline is formally put in through here. Now, what I want to do is to make sure that this baseline area isn't one length in its appearance. So what I'm going to do is just to take sections above the initial baseline, like so, just straight sections all the way around. And and then start working that hair down to the baseline. But as I start to work it down, what I'm going to be doing is graduating the hair at the same time. Very slightly graduating, so the edge of the haircut isn't too flat. It's got a little bit of graduation on the line. So I'm going to hold the hair out, and you can see just underneath on my finger here, you can see there's the baseline. So you continue that with the razor, so you keep almost a one length line, but you start to graduate at the same time. So you're taking a one length line angle, you're just moving it up slightly. And this gives you a nice softening effect on the edge of the cut. You work this all the way around. And you just take sections next to each other. So you're holding the hair out at 90 degrees. You use your baseline, the underneath hair, as your guide. And you just work from underneath and work your way up. It's exactly the same technique that was used many years ago when haircuts were always only done with a razor. You work from the underneath and work your way up. It's the same type of action. What all this does is give you a nice softening effect on the cut. Now, whenever you're using the razor in this capacity and you're trying to cut a straight line with it, you work from behind the line and again angle the razor slightly to one side so that you can get the blade against the hair. Do the same thing. Just work all the way around. Again, the blade of this will give you a really nice softening effect. For those of you who don't want to use the blade on this, you'll find that by using the scissors will give you that blunt edge, as I said, but you can soften that by point cutting into it. The reason I will use the razor on this is because it's much quicker. To cut actually a line and then to blunt or point cut out to release the weight actually takes maybe 3 times the time that it does to use a razor and get the same effect. So it's much quicker, you have more control over it, and I think it's a lot easier to do. Right, just taking another section. Now the perimeter shape is the most important part. So as far as getting the lengths or choice of lengths that you put into this haircut is probably the most important decision that you make on it. So coming from that, I'm now going to take that graduation up to a slightly layered line. So the next section, instead of being angled and cut like that, it's going to be cut more towards that angle. So we're starting to almost go into a soft layering pattern. So we've just got long layers sitting on top of this line at the moment. And again, straight sections all the way around. And you just blend that to the rest of the cut. You can see how quick it is to actually cut that in with a blade, and then point cut afterwards would actually be very time consuming. And there's a real fine line between over layering or over texturizing very fine hair, which can make the hair look actually thinner, which is not what you want, or leaving it far too one length. If you leave it too one length, it will actually sit very flat to the head. So you do have to get some sort of movement. The razor, funnily enough, on the finer hair, the hair sort of texture is really fine. The more fine it is, you'll find that the more volume you get from using a razor, which sounds very strange and almost doesn't make sense. But because you're creating softness on the ends of the hair, it tends to create an expanse. And you just continue with the same line as you're pivoting around towards the front. Now, because obviously there's less thickness of hair at the front, sometimes you may want to pull back slightly as you begin to work there. But you can only be judged by the thickness of the hair. I'm just going to pivot her around slightly so you can see these sections quite clearly. Take a small piece from the previous section and a new section of hair, and then you start to work that in the same way. Now I'm going to work up very slightly, as you can see. There's a very slight angle on the hair. Part the hair across and bring it through, not too far forward. And continue the same line of cutting. Now, by using a circular section, because you're working to the head shape, and you're just creating this sort of slightly shorter feeling around the top, it enables you to then take that circle and then blend it out much easier, which I'm going to do with a razor. And you just keep pivoting that around, just keeping an eye on the section on the underneath, because this area is totally isolated from the rest of the haircut. Again, on thicker hair, if you wish, you can take that circle from 2 inches and 1.5 inches and increase that. It does depend on the hair that you're working on. Just turn Linda around a bit more. And you take it right back to almost the very first section that I took. So I've done a full sort of circle right through the top of the area of the head. And just make sure that those blend together. There we go. Which it does. So here we go from the top. You can see that you've got that shorter semicircle of hair. You can just see the edge on that all the way around. What I need to do is to take that and blend it out to the entire haircut, which is very simple to do, very easy. All you have to do is to make sure that you work around the perimeter of the haircut and blend it out all the way round. So wet the hair down again, because I'm going to use the razor on this. And comb the hair right the way round before you start. Like so. Ignoring the parting that's naturally going to be staying in the hair. And what you do is you then take the section and you lift it up. When you're working with a razor and you're going from short to long, you lift the hair from the underneath of the haircut. And if you look carefully there, you can see the guidelines right here. What you have to do is to blend that to this area of the haircut here. So I'm basically going to just sculpture the line out from the underneath. So you hold the hair from the underneath, you let go of the hair that's already been cut, and you blend out. Now, by doing it this way, you have full control of how much hair you can blend to. So you can make the blend a very steep blend, so you maintain all the thickness around the edge, or you can make the blend less steep and lose even more weight on the edge of the cut. So you're fully in control of how you do that. The whole thing, again, is pivotal, so it's working to the shape of the head. Just turn her around slightly. Lifting up from the underneath. Very clean sections again, working with a razor, and then blend out. And that's how you work the entire way around this haircut. Now, if you want to do a very steep blend, what you can do is when you hold the hair up, you just hold the razor behind and slide off. I'm actually cutting a little bit more into the layers as I'm working, as you can see. And I'll just try and show you that actually on the close-up here. So here we are, right from the front. There's the baseline right here. And you can then take it in and carve out towards the edge. So you still get some more layers flowing into the shape of this cut. I've just done the whole front section from here. I'm going to pivot round this side in exactly the same way. Just check this first. And once you've cut that section, just let it go. You don't need to re-hold the previous section. There's the piece I'm going to blend to. And you just blend out to wherever you wish. And notice that that's the center point that you work to whenever you're working the sections. You can see you let go of the hair and then blend off. And again, because the front of the hair is often the thinnest part of the hair, or there's less hair to work with, your blending in that area will be slightly steeper than maybe when you start to work towards the back. So just work that round again so you can see the angle. Hold the hair from the underneath and then run the layers down. Now this is a great technique to use, not just on this length hair. If you're doing a very long haircut that has a nice short layering pattern going on the top, you can use the same technique of blending it to create the same effect. Obviously you're working with longer hair, so that your angle of blending will be slightly longer as well. Okay, now I'm going to work this into the back. And this is where obviously the back section was a little bit lower, so we went down 2 inches from the crown. So you just take small sections all the way around, you can see that. Hold the hair out, the hair's already been layered at the back, and just blend it together. And I'm more inclined to use less of an angle here. You can see that. Blend it off to the baseline. And keep pivoting right the way round. Right, not only is the texture of the hair slightly thicker, or the density, should I say, the texture of the hair is slightly different here as well. So you can afford to take the layers fairly short through the back. And to finish off, I'm going to take it from here and bring it round to this section here. Lifting up from the underneath and blending down. And that should give you a really nice blend between the two. And because they've been layered slightly differently, you've got the more club cut line or more blunt line at the top, and then blended off with a razor. And what it does is it gives you that quite strong edge to the layers, but then they blend out and disappear into the rest of the cut afterwards. Now you can see already that obviously because this area is shorter, we've got that extra length, but you can even see this when it's wet. If you just work the hair like that, you can see that it's nice and blunt around this top area here. And that really does complete the haircut. Now, what I would do is to take the cut from this point. I always visually check the hair. Your mirror is the key to that. And even though the hair is beginning to dry, you can still see the weight and the shape that's been created with the cut. And you can also check at this point how much weight has been removed on the layering. And if you feel that you need to take a little bit more, you can do that at this point by texturizing, or you can wait until the hair's finished. Because we're using the razor edge, you can use this when the hair's dry and still create a nice sculpture. The most important part of this layering is that you've got this long length at the front, but very short layers sitting behind it, which gives it the effect that I wanted. So we'll just move straight into the finishing. Okay, now before I start drying the hair, I'm just putting a little bit of a light lotion on Linda's hair. Because the hair is quite fine, if you overload it with a strong volumizing product, it will actually make it very difficult to create the effect you want, and it weighs the hair down. So I'm using a very light lotion, which is called Crystal Styler. So just spray that right the way through, and it's light enough to put it through, blow dry. And if you feel like you need extra volume, you can actually spray it into the hair when it's dry as well, and sort of power dry it to create more volume through the hair. So I'm going to put that through first. And what I'm going to be doing is to blow dry the hair using a round brush in certain areas, and it's only to create the right direction in the hair. So I'll probably use it towards the front areas, a few pieces at the side, but the rest of the blow dry will be based on power drying it, so allowing the natural hair volume to take over and get a texture to it. Sometimes if you use a brush or overuse it, it tends to smooth the hair together, and especially with this type of texture. So a combination of using a brush and power drying as well. you've got the basic shape with the drying, using the power of the dryer as well as a little bit of brushwork, what I'm going to put through now is some pomade through the hair from High Hair and just put a little bit through. Now, you take a fairly small amount of product and just warm it up in your hands. And the idea is to put this through really the ends of the layers all the way round. So you're just touching the ends of the hair as you're doing this. So you can start to get a real texture on the hair. It's a very important part of the drying procedure because you need the product to start giving a little definition and to break the hair up so you can really see the texture of the cut. So you just work the product through. Make sure you spread that evenly around. Not at the roots, just on the ends. And then what I'm going to do is to blow dry that into the hair. So you're actually warming the product up into the hair to separate it. And I was saying earlier on in the program that you really have to sometimes use the judgment of your eye when you're cutting to see how much weight you need to remove or to add or to take away. The same goes when you're finishing the hair. And even though you may use a brush to create the effect, you do need to then release the texture in the hair. You need to have a sense of freedom running through the hair so that you get a really good finish on it, but something that looks natural and doesn't look overdone. So when you're drying, use your mirror. So as you're power drying the product through the hair, you can see the whole shape forming in front of the mirror, and don't try to make the whole thing too perfect. You need the sense of freedom to be in there. The shape itself you use from the haircut that you've put in. That's where your shape is. All you're doing is trying to get a good texture and a good finish on it. You don't need to work particularly too hard on the rest of it. Now, you can add a little bit more product in specific areas, say through the front, just to get a little bit more texture over the fringe. And let me just turn around so you can see the type of shape we've got at the back. Now, really fine hair, you can see that there's a nice thickness running through the edge of the line, even though it's quite heavily layered. And this short layering just round the top here really works very well to create texture in hair that would normally sit very, very flat. We've kept that extra length at the front, lovely shape through the sides. It's slightly longer than the rest of the cut. And the product to create that lovely texture running through the haircut. Okay, I'm going to start this haircut through the back. And as you've seen from the finished look, it's basically quite a blunt outline shape with this real soft asymmetric coming through on one side. What I want to do is to make sure that there's a really defined shape around the edge, and it's going to be stronger at the back and then really quite soft at the front. So I'm going to start by cutting the back just blunt, taking the length up a little higher. You can see this lovely tattoo underneath here. So we'll be able to see it a bit better now. Okay, now, because the hair's already been layered quite extensively before on a previous haircut, I don't need to really take a section to do this. I just want to cut a blunt, very slightly rounded line to keep a very simple shape on the back section. So start by keeping the hair nice and flat, but letting the natural movement of the hair just relax before you then place the comb onto the skin to cut the line. You take that line right up, nice rounded line towards the ear. I'm going to do the same on the other side. And again, make sure that you sort of comb the hair down and let it relax a little bit before you cut the line through. Nice blunt shape. Then what you do is you deal with these pieces of hair here on the hairline by cutting into them. And just show you from this side, you always get a few little hairs that grow further down from the hairline. And the same this side. So nice blunt, rounded shape, just straight onto the hairline. And it's thickened this up because it was carved into quite severely on the previous cut. So it's going to give us a nice blunt shape to work to from there. Now, because Caroline's hair is really very thick, she's got a sort of medium textured hair, but it's extremely thick hair. And if you try to achieve a very sort of softened, almost geometric line, but a really soft appearance to the hair, what can often happen is there's too much hair to work with. So in that case, and also you don't get enough movement in it because of the length that we're cutting this. So in cases like that, when there's almost too much hair to deal with, and you want to be able to get a little bit more variety onto the look, what you should do is to undercut the hair. Now, undercutting has been in for many years, and it's been used in various different ways over the last 20 years. The way in which I'd like to use it this time, and the way in which we're undercutting, is a little different because what we're tending to do is undercut, but it's very much an integral part of the haircut. Last time undercutting came in, which was a long time ago, it was tended to used as quite an aggressive part of the cut. It was extremely close and almost done with scissors over comb. This particular type of undercutting is done with a razor, and it's done so it's short, but it still has movement in it, so you can use it as part of the haircut. But it removes the weight for the hair to drop over the top of it, which you'll see as I'm working through. I'm just going to undercut this side to behind the ear and the other side to start with, and then blend that to the rest of the cut afterwards. And the way in which you do it is you start at the front. I'm going to go to the other side so you have a better view of this. You start at the front, and what you do is you take the section like so, and you cut this area of the hair shorter, leaving, and I'm going to leave some long pieces that just drop down from the side area here where the sideburn is. So you take it forward and you cut fairly close chipping away so you're getting a slightly erratic line. And as you work towards the sideburn, you just blend that out and leave that nice and long. Decision on length is entirely up to you, but it's actually quite nice length through here. You then take sections subsequent to that, and you cut the same length, so it's still short, and leave a little bit of length if you wish for the sideburn area. But this is quite short, you can see that, how short that is. But it's long enough to still get the movement that you require to be part of the haircut. Now, the reason for using the razor is to give it an erratic length as you are undercutting this area. And because the length is erratic, it doesn't matter how straight that hair is, it will give a softness, automatic softness to it. If you were to use scissors to do this, you can get a good effect, but you'd have to texturize to get a softness to it. So the hair is really quite short right up to here and quite tight across to behind the ear. And do the same thing exactly on the other side. Now, the decisions you have to make when you're designing a haircut, because the design of any haircut is probably the most important part, the thought that goes into it before you start is the most important part. And when you're designing the haircut in your head, what you've got to do is to decide, make those decisions of where your undercutting will start and where it would finish. It's obviously based on the design, but it's also based on the amount of hair and the thickness of hair that you're working with at that time. I'm just going to section off in the same way. Keep the hair away from that section because it's totally cut to a different level on the top. And just to recap, you have to take nice and short up here all the way to here, slightly longer pieces here, but keep it nice and tight. I'll do that on this side from here. So you can see it. Just shift that hair right forward, cut in front of the finger, using slightly chipping movement, so you're getting it short, sort of short and long pieces inside that cut, and then keep some length for the sideburn area. Now, with the razor's edge, as I said on the beginning of this program, is that it has different heads on it. And because I'm going to be sort of texturizing and cutting straight lines, you can remove that. Once your blade becomes very blunt, you remove it, you turn it round, and bring the head back to that position. Okay, just moving on to the next section.